Hey there sexy vault dwellers, Stormy Skies 369 here, and this video is going to be looking at an interview by the editor-in-large for Paste magazine Holly Green and the project lead for 76 Jeff Gardiner and the 76 designer Mark Tucker. Okay, so I'm excited to find out what we can expect from Fallout 76 in the future, so let's have a look. Okay, so Holly starts by saying, let's talk about the upcoming update to Private Worlds. Can you share anything about what that might entail? Fans are hoping for larger servers in Private Worlds, while others like myself hope that Bethesda will open up Private Worlds to more individualized tools that can be used for content creation purposes. So mods, I suppose. Okay, so in your AMA you mentioned some of the changes include PvP elements along with hardcore survival elements. Is this Bethesda's way of bringing back the survival mode? Does it signify a shift in their strategy for PvP support? So Jeff's response is, right off the bat with regards to increasing server size of Private Worlds, it's something we discussed and are actively investigating. But there's no plan on updating that with the Q3 release. For individual worlds, it's going to stay at 8 players. In terms of survival and PvP, a lot of the goal of this game originally was to include more of these elements, and over time we have turned a lot of those off or leave them optional for people. Without spoiling too much, we are hopefully going to give players the tools to recreate a very similar experience on their own. Okay, so not giving anything away there, but Holly does press further. Going back to the part about changes to PvP elements in Private Worlds, is that where we'll be seeing the support for PvP in the future? Okay, so Mark Tucker says, well, we listen to our fans, but we also look and see what they do in game. Obviously, we collect a lot of data on what our players do, and so we have to look at what the vast majority of our players are doing and where it makes sense for us to invest the majority of our development time. While we have a very committed fan base that loves PvP, the overwhelming activity in the game is more centered around PvE content. It's a delicate balance for us. We have to look at what the overwhelming majority of players are doing and make sure we're not allocating too much time away from that, and so that's been a lot of our focus. And I think we can definitely see that in game, that their focus has been on the PvE, especially now with the deletion of nuclear winter coming. Sad times. So Gardner says it's great for people who love it, but for the people who don't like it and are on the receiving end of it, it can be a terrible experience. So we've tried over the years to balance those two. We're hoping with Private Worlds we will give options to people. We are hoping to leverage the technology and worlds to give the people who want to engage in a more PvP-centric space the tools to do that on their own. But the game as a whole, we are planning on keeping Care Bear, or whatever they used to call it, where it's not really an active engaged part of the game as much, but we're hoping to support that in a more individualistic way for the people who want to engage in it. So really saying there that their focus and time is going to be spent on the PvE side of it, although they do acknowledge the PvP players that do enjoy that side of the game and hope to implement something for them as well. Let's go back to the part about imbuing Private Worlds with an element of control. Now you were kind of saying that in regards to survival mode, but if I can add to that, many fans, content creators in particular, would love to have some additional elements of control within their Private Worlds. For example, control over the time of day and weather. Has the team given any thought to this? This is a really good question, especially for the camp builder creator YouTubers out there. I know myself that it's so annoying because at night you get the light, at day you get to see a lot more detail. So having that kind of control would be awesome. With the nocturnal buff coming as well, I could really see nocturnal builds being a thing in the future. Personally, I have a long history with the mod community and Fallout, so that's something I really like to hear. And Jeff Gardiner says, we've been talking about it for a long time. It's like what Mark was alluding to. With the live service, games are always a push-pull. Our eyes are bigger than our stomachs and we want to do everything, but we have to make smart decisions. We're trying with 76 over time to take cautious steps in different directions with every patch we put out. We have done a lot of updates to the game now, and we're more than willing to experiment with things and then try new stuff out and cutting the stuff out that isn't working. Okay, Holly then says, the season ladder and updates show a promising focus on adding new content, be it the new quest lines or with the smaller events or daily events. But what are the long-term plans beyond that? The longevity of the Elder Scrolls Online, for example, could arguably be attributed to the scope of its new content, will Fallout 76 ever see new locations? And by that I mean fully realised spaces and not individualised off-map locations as with Expeditions. Okay, Mark replies, it's not something we'd ever ruled out. Even as a player of our own game, that would be something I would love too, right? The Expeditions are kind of our intermediate inroads to getting players more interested in locations and things to explore and see and do. They'll create a nice window into the Fallout universe because we can go to a lot of different locations and it's fun to see the different locations at this point in the timeline. Door has not shut on that, but that would be a much further out initiative for us. In the short term, we're really excited about Expeditions and the play loops that they're going to provide. There's still a lot of story in Expeditions and NPCs. All the things you'd expect to find in a Fallout game will be there. I think Expeditions will be a breath of fresh air for the game. I think it does give us a tool to provide a lot of really different locations over time, which in some ways is a benefit. We might be able to do it on a more frequent basis versus, just one giant new landmass kind of thing. So there are definitely pros and cons to it, but this is the immediate direction we will be taking. Jeff replies, yeah, and we definitely understand that content is king, so we're also exploring new events and all sorts of other things that will bolster West Virginia, which is still a large landmass in and of itself, as much as we can. So the door hasn't been shut on another map, but it seems that their focus is going to be on adding new events and quoting all sorts of other things. Not too much detail given there. Mark responds, and there's another thing to consider. Since we've shipped, we have made changes to our existing world. It's a unique thing that we can do with our game that other games prior really weren't able to do. Having the world change over time can provide a lot of fresh air and a breath of excitement and new opportunities for exploration and story. Holly says, I'm so sad that Season 5 will be the conclusion of the Brotherhood of Steel storyline. But I love the content updates and have fleshed them out more as a fraction. As a member of the Fallout 76 roleplay community on PlayStation 4, I know how much players have gravitated towards and aligned themselves with these groups, and I think leaning into the aspect of the game's narrative is a good long-term engagement. If the game and communities focus on fractions, will we see any more detailed support for fractions in the future in terms of quest lines? There are rumours that a few things are in store for the Enclave, for example. Okay, Mark responds, as far as factual support, that's something we have a lot of ongoing discussions about, and we have some early ideas that we're looking into for, further out about how to possibly expand that in the area of the game, to add in more fractions and explore different fractions that we haven't really explored much in the game or haven't really explored since release. So those are all the things that are definitely on the table. I don't have any specific details to provide today on that though. Holly then says, so tell me more about these legendary module updates. Will these be used to create 4 and 5 star weapons, yes? Can you explain what each subsequent star award to a piece of weaponry or armour does to its star base and why this is so significant? Will 4 and 5 star weapons be included in any drops or will those only be craftable? Mark's response, with 4 stars, what's interesting, kind of taking a step back with the Steel Rain update, we're expanding the 3-star legendary crafting into the power armor items, so that's going to add a lot more build versatility. Moving forward to 4 stars, some of our original plans we're rethinking a little bit. And that's really heavily based on our player feedback from the public test server. What I would have told you a few weeks ago is changing. That said, with 4 stars, there's always going to be a player expectation of power gain, right? So we want to make sure that we're meeting that expectation. It's tricky because we have very powerful builds already. There's only so far we can go, but I will say we're going to do our best to meet that expectation. There's still a lot we're rethinking, and a lot of that was based on some really great feedback from our PTS players, and so we've listened and we're adjusting. Okay, Holly says, legendary armour seems to be the feature fans are most excited about for the Steel Rain season. I noticed in the recent update notes that unyielding has been nerfed. A lot of people will be heartbroken about that. Weapons seem to be given new mods with the legendary upgrade. Are there any plans to bring any legendary armour specific mods into the mix? So Mark responds, yeah, so we have added new mods to the weapons, for the power armor mods for the most part. I believe we've adapted the ones that make sense off of the armor mods. I'm drawing a blank right now, honestly. If we have added any new ones into the power mod, I'd have to go back and review that, but we are planning for the future. Once we move into the 4 stars, we have plans to add more mods across the board. As far as balancing and adjustments like changing things for power armor versus armor, seeing and learning what the differences are with adding these mods onto the power armor versus armor, and we have to make adjustments. So we try to be as transparent as we can on that with them and why we're doing it. Across the board, we're actually boosted a great majority of the legendary mods, especially ones that weren't as popular as before. We've really tried to avoid nerfing, and actually, for the vast majority of the changes we've made going into Steel Rain are actually improvements. Okay, so Jeff responds, we learned that lesson early on. We try to be much more additive than negative in terms of fixing things, by adding benefit to things that are weak instead of removing power from things that are strong. And I think on the most part that is a true statement, but they nerfed the unyielding power armor, and personally that is the worst thing for me they could have nerfed. Okay, so Jeff goes on to say that there are always outliers that you can't quite do that without a huge sea change to the game. So occasionally we do have to nerf, but we take it very seriously, like Mark said. Okay, so Holly says, let's talk about social system support. Some fans are expressing a desire for guild support, which would be an ideal for the gamer's format in terms of building and shared material resources. Is there an eye for larger raid format, like to use Elder Scrolls Online for a comparison reference, like trials where you can actually have a coordinated effort of a team of 8, not just people who occasionally show up and do things with you, so more structure. In other words, is that something we can look forward to within this game? So Jeff responds, we can't answer that specifically, but Mark and I talk nearly daily about long-term plans to increase the ability for folks to play this game together. And it's not on the immediate horizon, but we can promise you that the long-term vision for this game is to add more and more features that allow players to play together, because it just makes the game better. It makes everything more fun. I totally agree, it does. Next year we're going to be able to tackle some of those big issues in a very succinct and substantive way. Honestly, it's funny, because in the early days of this game, I think we tried to make this sort of a non-MMO, if that makes any sense. Like we were trying to make it a different kind of game. And so while there is inclination to take some from MMO systems, we do resist that often. But at the same time, things like just basic communication, that doesn't make the game an MMO, it just makes the game more fun for people to play. And so Mark and I are always looking for ways to do that within the resources. Mark adds, a couple of things I wanted to add to that. Going back to my lack of answer for the mods on power armor, we do have new mods for legendary power armor. I was able to quickly look the information up, but we do have mods for power armor, quite a few actually. In addition to that, as Jeff was kind of alluding, we have a unique game in that it's played by many people kind of like an MMO. But then we have a lot of players that play a little bit more like a traditional single-player Fallout game. We definitely are thinking a lot about how to push our social system and give players the kind of things that you're talking about, but our solutions might be a little different than what traditional MMOs offer. As Jeff pointed out, we are talking about this on a very regular basis. It is very important, and yeah, so we'll find people who play together stay together. That's absolutely true. Holly says, unlimited ranks seem like a great way to keep players interested long after they've finished the ladder. Are there any plans to let new players catch up on the past season's ladders? You guys have some great rewards hidden in there, but not all of them are available for purchase later. Those greenhouse walls in particular. Is there a timeline for getting these items in the bullion vendors, or will they simply end up in the atomic shop? Okay, Jeff responds, on those, we put as many of those to the gold shop as we feel good about. I'll make a note of the green shop walls and find out if we can get them somewhere. That's the kind of thing that's probably just an oversight, to be honest. So that does sound quite promising. I know there's quite a few of you that missed out on those and are very keen to get them. Let's hope for gold bullion and not atom shop though. Mark adds, I would like to echo what you're saying. Our goal is to try to get most of it into the gold bullion play loop. It's interesting though. Sometimes if players are asking for it to go into the atom shop, we may do that as well. Into the atom shop, I don't think anybody really wants anything to go into the atom shop. They'd much rather in-credit coins such as bullion or caps. Okay, Mark goes on to say, we'll listen to our players and we'll see what we can do to accommodate that. But I can't specifically say when or where those are in the schedule lineup for. That's just a level of detail I don't have. Okay, Holly says, camp slots. Any word on the final number, and are there any plans to allow underground shelters to be separate from individual camp slots? Is Bethesda open to expanding the number of character slots in the future? Any chance we'll be allowed to have more than one companion at our camps? A good question there. Mark says, I'm trying to remember what the engineering limit was on the camp slots. I believe we're putting the ability for 4 more. Hey, Jeff adds, for a total of 5 camps. I don't know if this is a spoiler or not, I don't care. That's coming up in update 28 with Steel Rain. That might be expanded on from there, but there are back-end database concerns. We put as many of those up as we could. To be clear, the next 4 are for sale, so they're going to be in the Atom shop. Right now we're sticking to 1 companion per camp, but I think pets are going to be separate. Okay, Mark says pets are going to be their own slot, so they would be in addition to the companions, but right now we are not planning in the immediate future to expand number of companions. There's a lot of technical limitations that really prevent us from going down that path, which is not a great answer that you want to hear, but we are planning to let you have a pet and a companion. Holly asks, what's the 5-year plan for Fallout 76? And Jeff responds, well, we can't share details, but anytime you look at anything in life 5 years down the road, I think it's a lot of wish list things. Fallout 76 is definitely going to be in existence for 5 years, I'll tell you that. The reason you don't want to put a lot of stone in a 5-year, like let's say 2 or 3, 4 years down the line, is because you want to be wrapped with the fans right, and what the game realities are showing you. So sometimes you fall in love with a feature and you finally get round to making it into 2 years, and I'll remind people, like, just because Mark or I approved something years ago doesn't mean it's still yes years later. And so we definitely have plans well into the next year and probably the year after, but those will change based on PTS feedback, based on all sorts of things, but we definitely have plans and we're definitely looking forward to supporting this game for years and years to come, right Mark? Okay, so Mark goes on to say, yeah, no, that's it. We do have a long-term vision for the game. We adapt and we pivot based on what our players are doing in the game and what they're saying. Jeff concludes by saying, and what we want to do too, honestly, we are fans of our own game, so we'll play the game and say, that'd be cool if we did this, and then a lot of people will find a fan who already thought of it, and it's like, see, we can justify it now, let's do it. This game has been so wonderful because of the interaction with the fans. Honestly, it was difficult at first, I won't lie, but that was all very fair. These days it's awesome to put stuff out there and see what people have done with it, like giving people the freedom and creativity to explore this world. And however many different tools we can give them, like, it's a wonder, it really is. Okay, so I think we can take from that the 4-star legendary crafting is quite a way off, but there will be new mods added when it is released. Also, more season leaderboard rewards will be brought back by the way of gold bullion or the Atom shop, with a specific mention to the greenhouse building being looked into. Steel Rain will be released on the 28th and will include more camp slots, but these will have to be purchased from the Atom shop. No additional companion slots are on the table at the moment, but pets are coming and they will be an addition to your camp alongside the companions. So the door hasn't shut on another map altogether, but it sounds more likely that there's going to be more of a focus on the different factions, possibly factions we haven't been exposed to since release. Maybe they will finally introduce the Zetans. So despite the deletion of Nuclear Winter, PvP hasn't been forgotten and is being looked at, but the focus really is on the PvE side of things. Private servers remain at 8, but they are looking at giving more control over the private servers. It was mentioned about the weather, so I feel that any new mods and elements may be introduced to the private servers first, if the public servers at all. So for the moment, that seems to be the future vision for Fallout by Mark Tucker and Jeff Gardiner. Hope it was of interest to you. Do let me know in the comments below. I'll see you guys soon. Bye.